Here we are. Alrighty. Hey Ben,
Awesome.
nice to see you again, man.
Yeah, man.
Sweet. Yeah. So I think you've been now using the Arroyo platform for about I'd say what, close to a year, maybe a little bit less, a little bit more than right about a year time frame.
Yeah, that's one frame of time to use. I mean, to me, it's like it's better say it's been about 5 grows. Uh,
Nice.
So yeah, yeah,
Okay. Well, sweet. I mean, before we kind of dive further into this, how about you go ahead and introduce yourself and kind of where you're based off and what you guys are doing up there.
cool. Yeah, my name's Ben Chute. I'm head of cultivation here at Yani Cannabis in the state of Maine. Um, and we've been in operation now with our indoor facility, our two-tiered style cultivation facility for about 2 years in the adult use market. Um, and coming from a background of soil, an outdoor grown soil, as well as mixed light and hybrid type style lighting in auto dep houses, as well as a dep tunnel and pulling tarps and all of that. And that's kind of where a lot of my background was, as well as in the medical side of cultivation with a limited plant count. So
Awesome.
I got into cultivation kind of shortly after high school or so. Was hired by a caregiver who said, looked at this kid and was like, "This, he's a hard worker. Let's see what he can do." And to go from 30 indoor plants to looking at 1,600 plus on a two-tiered in the past about 8 years of my experience now in this industry. It's amazing to kind of see how far along it's come. Um,
Definitely. Definitely.
and I would say in the past 5 years, the past 1 year or so I've been with Arroya has probably been the time period I've seen and I've experienced and have learned the most at an explosive rate. I would say,
Awesome to hear.
yeah,
I mean, making that jump from, you say, your mixed light outdoor cultivation to kind of an indoor, um, into the indoor cultivation. I mean, what was your experience, or what was your mindset as you made that jump, and especially as you came into this facility, like before you even got Arroya, like what was going through your mind, and like and just your overall kind of experience of what you were seeing there.
yeah. I think there was a point where I knew that there had to be decisions that could be backed by data, and was trying to find technology that was that was out there for the outdoor, and I didn't really know what was available. So I ended up getting a Blue Lab soil sensor pen, or like a pulse is
Yeah.
what it was called. Um, and because it's pretty tough growing outdoors in Maine, like and we're on the coastal region, so kind of knowing where you're at moisture content wise is pretty important as far as like irrigation scheduling and whatnot. And I didn't only want to just have like traditionally there's a lot of field-based science in the outdoor cultivation, where it's a lot of field-based that does is derived from experience.
Yeah.
I've
Totally.
always learned from like the old heads and so on. So but in this day and age, when somebody asks me like, "Hey, can you grow this?" I want to have an answer that follows like, yes, and here's why. Because when I hit these numbers in the soil, like good things happen, or
Yeah.
I can have with some confidence say things. So um, and that so it's kind of interesting that a simple soil testing pen that would read EC and moisture content would lead to um, a room full of substrate and environmental sensors being put on an easy to read graph.
Definitely, definitely. So kind of continuing with that aspect of being in Maine, having such a vast change in environment and between the different seasons. I think that was one of the first things we kind of noticed when we started getting some, say, climate stations set up in the room, is kind of how having good environmental data plays a huge factor in kind of what you're trying to do in, say, the root zone. And a lot of times when you hear people talk about crop steering, you just hear crop steering in the industry. Most people just focus on what's happening in the root zone. How many times they're feeding a day, how often, how frequent. But we don't hear enough about actually how important having good environmental data is to really dictate what we're able to do in the root zone. So
Mhm.
can you kind of speak on what some of the major changes that you've seen right away when you started getting some good environmental data, you started getting some good sensors in the room, and how did that play effect potentially into some of the root zone changes or irrigation changes that we were kind of discussing?
Yeah, I mean, I would say right away putting the climate station in the room, and essentially kind of bringing the room online. Single-handedly, you saw a difference overnight in how you were better help your plants transpire, and if you wanted to push that more or not. And there's a plethora of products out there with their own set of um, whatever that makes them attractive to certain growers, big or small. But I've and like a good example I would say is like if you were to go to like a department store and grab a hygrometer, thermometer, even if you bought the same model and took them out of the box and then put them next to each other in a room, like I would guarantee they probably wouldn't read the same thing. And I
Yeah.
think, and a lot of that I think is just because of the whatever the cheaper components and how um, not everyone is going to read accurately or really precise. Everything will pretty much get you in a ballpark, I would
Yep.
say.
And a lot of
Uh,
people don't even understand too that actually, I mean, just the calibration factor too. When you step
right.
into a room with a hygrometer, I mean, you
Yeah.
don't want to just go in there and take that reading right away. You want to let that get adjusted to the humidity in that room to actually give you a little bit better understanding. That's, I mean, that's almost any conversation as well too. Um,
Right. So the biggest change I saw was for one, calibrating a room sensor isn't necessarily something that's even a conversation sometimes because it's just out of the box, ready to rip.
yeah,
Plants are looking weird. What is it? What's going on? Well, this says that. Okay. And then you'll quickly move on. But your tools are, even with the outdoor are supposed to be, they're supposed to be sharp. You're supposed to
yeah,
take care of your equipment. You need your equipment to be performing well. So I started calibrating the existing sensors in the room that control my HVAC and environmental stuff to the AROYA sensors. And I mean, there could be a difference of upwards of 15% in humidity between something that you're getting off the market for whatever to the Arroyo one. And it's become now an SOP of mine to like at least once a week to check the calibration of each.
oh,
Um,
it's a week right now. That's pretty aggressive.
Well, and a lot can happen too. Like after a defol, there can be a change in airflow in your room. There can be a change where we'll adjust the sensors and climate stations height throughout the grow as the plants are stretching to be between the lights and the canopy.
Definitely.
Anytime there's a change, I'm always like, okay, like after the change, I let the room settle and then I'll calibrate. And it's just led to much better monitoring and controllability in the rooms.
Well, that's great to hear. I mean, at least, I mean, with that weekly calibration, you're starting to get things a little bit more pinpointed in, and you're developing some good SOPs around that to be kind of better use your time and kind of maybe continue a little bit more on some SOPs. Like, how has the platform, I guess, in general, maybe changed some of your guys' cultivation SOPs, or maybe even allowed you guys to adjust some time management between employees and what they need to focus on with you having some more tools in the facility?
Yeah, I mean, to basically just ask me like how has using the Arroyo platform benefited me. I mean, there's quite a few things, different like weird nuances to go into, as well as macro
Yep,
amount of things such as your how you're changing your environment throughout the life cycle of the plants. For right off the bat, what I have to do here is pretty pretty intense ramp up of light acclimation, and being able to be in control of my VPD and so on to accommodate that has been something there. But then, so that's, you know, an environmental and a plant response and stomata response. But then there's the daily room checks that occur.
Yeah.
And so Arroyo also helps in that regard too, with as we're checking our tanks, pH, everything's good, you know, okay, cool, chart, overnight dry back. You know, something got down past, you know, 20%, like, okay, 25%. Oh, that's weird. Let's look at the thing. Pull up the night chart for environmentals. You know, weird spikes. Weird. That's, you know, odd. What's going on? And it's just like it will constantly kind of put you in the direction that you need to go to keep troubleshooting or collecting data to follow up on something at an outlier that looks negative, or even one that looks positive too.
Yeah.
You're like, that row did awesome. What was going on? Like, you know.
Totally. Well, sweet. Um, let's see. Kind of. So, I mean, continuing now. So the combination of kind of your change of SOPs and the environmental, and like I was stating, how that does play effect in your root zone. I mean, what were before? I mean, even you had say good or even any substrate data. I mean, what was your kind of your average technique when it came to say feeding the plants? And or was there even really any good consistency of what you guys were doing? Was it more of, hey, the pots feel a little bit dry today. Let's go ahead and feed. Let's go feed this row. How
Right.
how was that compared to what you guys are doing now?
Yeah. I mean, going from where where there was no sensors in the room, and as I was taught was to, you know, you want to see some runoff, but you know, and you're looking, you know, for a moderate a moderate moisture content. But as I've learned now, it's like, well, that moisture content can change as the roots develop, or a root bind in your media, and your capacity can change throughout the plant's life cycle. So like, you know, you don't, the pot lifting is not a good method. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody growing over 100 plants or something. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I can do it, you know, but and so the method I had um, to starting to grow in the cocoa was to use that a moisture meter, which was not even really the correct one to be using in that instance. But what I would do is I would go on various nutrient supplier websites, and irrigation strategies started trickling onto the internet, and these companies started putting them out there, like, this is a ramp up, you know. So I was like, okay, let's make it go like this in the morning, I guess. How many feet is that? Like, you know, is that a shot size, you know? So and it was a struggle, man, for sure, because not only was my irrigation was needing to be dialed in, so that you could actually call it a strategy, because you have to consistently do these strategies over time, days and weeks on end, to see the result. You can't just do a different irrigation strategy each day and be like, and call it a strategy. You know, it's like, that's
Yeah,
not,
what did I do the day before?
it's endless, you know, it's just driving recklessly. uh and but that also goes along with your environmentals as well. As I was trying to learn how to dial in irrigation, um there was also that of the environmental, and seeing well, how warm should this room be? You know, and under LEDs I am finding better success in, well, you know, the warmer, or at least you know, the surface temperature of the plant, of the leaves, is being higher, is a bit better. So dialing in those two things simultaneously uh, was tough, to say the least, and with multiple cultivars and so on. Just getting a climate station in there, and like, and a substrate sensor, I mean, it definitely put um, things into focus a little bit. Like, I mean, it had something you could actually work with, um, and repeat, find things that you could repeat, and that you could dial in to be consistent. I figured out how to, with our two-tiered system, dial in a VPD that was fairly close top and bottom that would not sway out of like a point, 1 or something, or and that's tough. That's tough. But you need good sensors to be able to do that, to dial in your space.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I think continue on that too. I mean, with you, so you mentioned you being in that two tier. It's not even just making sure you are able to dial in, say, environment from that top to bottom, but it's also understanding like what genetics are going to work in your operational space. And a lot of times people don't understand, or they want to be able to run all these other genetics that other people are running in the market, and it's like, well, you can't control the stretch on that strain. How are you supposed to ever even be able to run that properly if you are foxtaling out the top third of it? So I
yeah,
think that is a huge part in how maybe the system has allowed you guys, when you were just kind of letting me know, is you guys are constantly pheno hunting, of
yes,
being able to build up a baseline of data on that cultivar, maybe on a generic schedule or strategy, and then
yeah.
once you guys have some sort of baseline, how has that allowed you guys to say repeat that success and continue driving quality and say yield?
Right. Yeah, I guess that is a very strong point to bring up, and um, that's how exactly I would describe it, is establishing a floor or baseline to how your facility can operate. Because I hear a lot of places you'll swing from 1.6 to 2.8 a light, grow to grow, all these So yeah, establishing something that does work. Um, um, and and yeah, you're right. Yeah, figuring out what cultivars will work in different areas in your grow is even something that you kind of unfortunately have to figure out too. um what the base setting up a baseline that does is, for one, you don't have to keep on figuring out your baseline, which took up a majority of my time for for a while. There was a baseline that was created, and you helped me a lot. And uh, as I was describing, like, well, this is happening now. I was like, okay, well, that might be like, let's adjust the parameter. So we, over time created this baseline where now I feel like we can actually have some fun. The baseline was awful. That was
Yeah,
the worst thing. That was difficult, to say the least. You need to be dedicated to your craft for sure to want to figure it out enough. But now that you're there, and you want to bring in some new genetics, and you can hopefully have some insight as far as what you're bringing into your rooms for what's stretching, or and what it very importantly, what will finish in what week
yep,
as well. Um, you can start kind of assigning them to different spots in your grow with a little bit of confidence, even too, that not only are you going to try something new, that it's gonna be good. And a lot of it, I mean, the dialing in, getting your baseline done, and then the room checks, doing the runoffs, preventative maintenance on just about anything you can think of, for
yep.
sure. Yeah.
Sweet. So with you guys constantly, I mean, I think you were stating you're at least every run you're having at least what one to two rows of all new genetics that you're constantly testing. So that definitely keeps you guys, I would say, on your toes and like trying to make sure that yeah, you're not seeing any herms. You're finding genetics or being able to keep documenting the certain maybe phenos that are kind of standing out. What are some of those things that tend to work best for your guys's facility, or that catches your guys' eyes as you guys are kind of searching through these different phenos?
Yeah, I would say for me and my growing tendencies, like, I don't I'll tend to veg up plants fairly large, and then flipping, and then very trying to generatively keep the stretch down and stack, because I only have about upwards of 5 feet of canopy, like, height to grow towards the light, if not less. So I like a I don't necessarily want strains that I need to push vegetatively to stretch. And so keeping that in mind is like when I'm encountering something like that I know ahead of time, it's a strain I'm not going to like top it or really train it as I normally would on everything else. Everything else I'll typically top once or twice, or like once every like week and a half or so, or
Okay.
yeah, pretty much at nearly at every transitional stage from coming out of the clone tray to before going into the rooms or something like that.
Gotcha. Sweet. So now with you, I mean, you were also mentioning that you guys have now seen kind of a pretty crazy jump in overall, say, wet weight over these past, say, 5 runs that you guys have had at the facility. How has that changed, I guess, some of your downstream processes, making sure that you guys actually now have the suitable space, or even able to just keep more documentation um, of what's happening?
Right. Yeah, now it puts a logistical strain on everything else that's down the line for sure. As far as like space and adequate space and drying and curing and processing, and at this facility we end up using every part of everything that we grow, because we make our own hash rosin here, as well as the pre-rolls. And processing the smalls into like into the pre-rolls and stuff like that. So I've found that at first, my first step, I would say, and at least in having a success, was growing really nice like top nugs, switching the crop steering. And then now through that was like, okay, like, but there's more that the plant could offer, and it's figuring out how to turn your lowers into hires essentially. So and I think that's kind of where we started seeing a lot of like the weight and the wet weight and the dry weight started to go up, was that a foot down was like great usable turnable flower, and then we added another 6 inches to that, and then another 6 inches to that. So now my goal underneath a 600 watt LED is to have about 2.5 feet to 3 feet of canopy depth underneath it. And that starts taking care of a number of things that we can use from the plant.
Gotcha.
Um,
So talking about kind of that, the overall plant length and just where you want your density wise. I mean, have you guys changed any of your tool to maybe achieve or see more of that overall biomass on the plant? I mean, have you guys changed any of your, say, pruning strategies or any of that in the cultivation side?
yeah, just dialing in, just kind of um, how how far up you're, and at what point you're cleaning up the plant in their vegetative stage, to um, at what height am I flipping with how many branches, at what light intensity, with the goal of a certain light intensity by a certain height
Yep.
of the plant, and pushing the plant to get to a certain height while stacking. Um, and that's been just kind of tweaked and tweaked over time. And even uh, at what EC are you trying to flip in the substrate are you trying to flip your plant at, and if it's going to be high or low. Like if it's lower, then you're going to might see a little bit more wider internodal spacing or something. In certain cultivars, of course, everybody wants to play differently, but um so, and then so what I've definitely have changed from what I was taught, and like, well, you need the D full on day 21. It's like, well, do you? Like, I don't know. Like, you start asking these questions. And so I've pushed that D full off until I see a cultivar that has finished in its stretch, and that so and instead of like a very rigid like day 21, I'm like, oh, I know what these ones do. This is a good one. I'm gonna map out a schedule for, I want to default starting on this row and work my way towards that one or something, because I know
This goes back to our continuous kind of data points that we're constantly tracking. I mean, keeping track of that somewhere. I mean,
yeah,
usually, I mean, we're used to doing it on some sort of a notebook, whiteboard, or something like that, but usually gets wiped off, thrown away, and
yeah,
that kind of all in a centralized location. Um, and going back to the operational standpoint, I mean, if a cultivar stretches more than 21 days, I mean, does it work even for our facility? So, I mean, yeah,
right.
there's a lot of things that I would say the platform allows you to kind of keep track of and keep it all in a centralized location, be able to kind of look at the data long term and see exactly what I did last run to what's happening going forward, or what do we
Yep.
want going forward to make those decisions.
Yeah, and use your crop registration tool to on the notes allows you to take pictures of your garden at the zone or wherever you're standing at. And when you're kind of flipping back through time, it's super helpful to see your graphs as well as see like what the plants looked like, and that helped me figuring out like at which plant heights and size to flip plants at and so
Totally.
on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that definitely helps. There's a lot of times where I'm working with people and I'm like, yeah, data looks great, but like, how do the plants look? I mean, I mean, as much as the data kind of allows us to dictate the direction that we're going, I mean, we have to have that in the eye of, I mean, looking at the plants, walking the rooms, seeing how things are going. Because even though we have things might look consistent, yeah, that doesn't always tell us the full picture of what's happening. So yeah, using those the crop registrations, uploading those images in there into the system is extremely helpful, not just for say myself, but even the employees on the field, or even say some of the higher ups that need to kind of see that maybe you don't need to have them kind of walking around the rooms every day. Like, hey, we're doing the things that we need to do. We have the data points. Here you go. Check those things out.
right. Right, absolutely. Yeah, as much information as you can give yourself for at a later date to look back on it, and also and because I was mostly handling a lot of the cultivation myself, and now bringing on kind of new stock and people that are experienced, non-experienced, and so on. It is kind of cool to have something there to be able to show them like here's the work like I've done so far, and here's what we learned and why. Um, it's
Yeah,
nice. Yeah. It's a
creating
great,
that baseline. Always back to that baseline.
right.
Well,
Absolutely.
sweet. I mean, what are kind of some of the next steps for you guys? Are what are some of the some cool things that you guys have working on up there in the state of Maine?
Yeah. I mean, we have our outdoors still. We're continuously hunting through genetics that, and with every outdoor season, it's like we say we're never going to pop any more seeds, but then like, oh, there's 1,000 more seeds. So that means, during the winter, I'm going to have upwards of 20 new, keepers to hopefully, to put in and look through. We're always looking for, something new to offer. Um, it's interesting as a cultivator to witness the trend waves of what's in, what's cool, not cool, but also be like, well, I have this granola funk whatever root beer that like you guys don't even know about yet. So while at the same rate, like, okay, like, yeah, we're doing some Tropicana, whatever, like this, and everybody loves it. So I would say that like the exciting stuff we're working on is definitely within trying out genetics and with our indoor and our outdoors. But uh I would say the next thing also is I want to move our crop steering ability and strategy into the veg side of things for us as well, and even experimenting with different dry room and curing parameters as well,
Yeah,
which
definitely.
yeah, there's some new stuff on that too.
Yeah, I would definitely say the veg room plays a huge factor in what you're able to do in the flower. I mean, the
Yeah.
better production or better veg round that you have, I mean, it just makes the flower production just 9-day difference of just the how easy it is. Even though it's not necessarily, there's a lot of things you still have to be able to nail, but
Yeah,
build up, um, get up to a certain EC level, continuously hitting certain plant heights, certain branching.
yeah,
Yeah, coming out of the bedroom does make a huge factor, um, for how successful you could be in kind of that flower state. And then yeah, going back into the dry room, yeah, the water measuring water activity, kind of understanding of what is that curve till we're able to get down to say that certain water activity to make sure we're not
yeah.
going to fail for any other pathogens. Um, Potentially. So yeah, those are both two, I would say, great points to continuously diving into and continuously owning on your craft in those
Right.
sessions.
I mean, I was always, from the 30 plant count days, it was always like, keep your room 78, 55, throughout the entire process of growing the plant. It's like, I was like, well, why? Well, because it works. And it's like, well, keep your dry room at 60, 60. And it's like, okay, like why? Like, well, because it works. Like, okay, well, and we're getting into a time here where there's not just one or two growers that are pioneering, and everyone's reading a magazine like a High Times, like figuring out what they're saying next. It's like no, like you literally have the ability to kind of pioneer in your own room or tent or whatever situation and you're in, and conduct these studies yourself.
Yep.
To figure out what the next bit of thing we can learn about cannabis is, and
Yeah,
it
and
comes down
kind of
to
going back to that baseline, it's kind of getting a baseline of like how does your dry room operate? I mean, just
right.
because say one of our environmental sensors where it's located when the room's dry or maybe not, I mean not full, says this. Well, once we start loading that in there with all this flour and this wet product, I mean, we might see potential different either hot spots or just different areas of how the room dries a little bit faster. This product might dry at a lot faster, or just even the different genetics might dry at a different rate, depending on some of those environmental. So being able to kind of build up that baseline and saying maybe where do I want to place this select cultivar at this location, um, or at this location in the room to make sure everything finishes at a pretty good consistent rate. Definitely plays a big process in your downstream.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, because we don't have everything finished in one day, and it's for sure not chopped in one day either. So, um, and you're right. Yeah, we've kind of found different areas in the dry room that different or later finishing flower will do better in, for sure. We've been letting our dry spaces warm up a little bit recently, into like the 75 ish mark, and we've been seeing some cool results with that and terpene preservation, and maybe in strains where those things are a little bit more volatile. So
Yep,
it's as deep of a rabbit hole as you want to pursue it. And but to come back and to circle back, it's like first like get that baseline. Like that's like you need that to so that you can keep on exploring.
exactly.
Yep.
Well, sweet. No, I appreciate it a lot. This was a really good conversation. I mean, it's always been great working with you. I think you guys have done some pretty cool things over the last year, and just how fast you're in that year timeline, how fast you guys have really been able to kind of dial in, find what does work for you guys and what doesn't work for you guys, and then continue to still dial in on your craft. Um, no, it's been
It's
pretty cool.
yeah, you saw it from some getting some pretty bleak results, and I was like, man, no, like it is. Let's look at the graphs. Let's talk. I'm just gonna throw it. So I mean, what you guys do there, and what you've done to help me out, and even just like you didn't just sell me like an SOP or something, because honestly, it might not have worked. It was very much like here's the right questions to ask, and here's something that you can use to learn about it yourself, and
Yep.
learn about your space yourself. So yeah, I mean, I would say, I don't know if you like want numbers here, but like, yeah, like we went from like a 1.8, like a light, to like a almost a 2, and it's like, okay, then we put the sensors in there, um, in both rooms. One was at the end of a grow, so I was like, well, I might learn about the last week of flower or whatever. But I think it was we went to like a 2.5, like the first grow, like immediately.
Yeah, that's a big
You
jump.
know, like it's a big jump and enough to be like, you know, you catch everyone's ear. You're like, oh, there's something, there's
There's something
something,
here, yeah.
something here. And so yeah, from there, you know, it's like, oh, why did that happen? You know, and recreating that, not just grow to grow, but you know, even just like each 4x8 tray needs to be perfect, you know, and dialed into what positive trends you have. And to the point now, this last poll looks like we're about to hit three light average on these 600 waters science LEDs. So I mean, just astronomical growth if you're willing to put in the work um, you know, and be observant, I guess,
Yep.
and take notes and have a lot of patience. Don't beat yourself up a lot, but you know, but also be very much motivated to improve each time.
Yeah. No, and I really like how you kind of speak on like there isn't just a set SOP for what we're kind of doing. I mean, there's a lot of setting a baseline, kind of testing those theories, pushing certain genetics or certain strains one way a little bit harder, the other way a little bit harder, and finding out what does work or what is best suitable for that cultivar in our facility, and then being able to kind of repeat that over and over again.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. It's just and yeah, recognizing patterns um and, and recreating them. It takes a lot of the stress away. You know,
Yes.
it certainly does. A lot of the mystery, you know. Um yeah.
Well, sweet man. Yeah, like I said, I appreciate you for hopping on here with me, kind of doing this little, getting some good information about you guys and what you're doing, and looking forward to the next time.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't. You were able to visit us over the summer, so I can't wait for you to come back and see where we're at. Because as the cultivation, as the yields and quality has improved, like I also see it improve in other areas of the business as well. Like we're hiring on more people. You know, our product, that we're finding new things. To do with it. And we're gonna have open up a storefront eventually here.
I
So
remember you talking about that a little bit. That's
yeah,
exciting.
I mean, it's crazy, man. Starting from like, you know, 30 plants to 60 plants, just a main outdoor medical, just trying to, you know, everybody's trying really hard out there.
Yep.
So, and now uh, we're actually kind of building out this thing that we was only really in our imaginations only a couple of years ago. So next time, you know, you're here next year, I'm sure you'll see a lot of the infrastructure also being um, changed um, and
Yeah.
improved as well.
I'm looking forward to it, man.
Yep.
Exciting things.